Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a Reddit no sleep creepy story, and the title of it is I think the little girl I used to babysit for was possessed. I have read this once. It is very creepy. I thought I would share. Starts it off by saying everybody's name in the story has been changed for obvious reasons. So let's just go right into this video. Okay. So I'm reading it off my phone, so I might be looking down. When I graduated high school, I went to college for only a year. I didn't finish because of personal reasons. I needed a way to make some money, and finding a job in my little town wasn't easy. Same. My mom suggested to me that Mr. Frederick was in need of a sitter, basically nannying because he worked out of town and was away for sometimes weeks at a time. The kids would stay with their grandmother on occasion, but she was getting up there in age, and it was difficult for her to manage two young children. The next weekend I called and asked if he was still looking for a nanny, and he quickly replied yes. We discussed what I would be paid and so forth. I was to start the following weekend and would have to watch them for the next week. Matthew was 13 and Julie was 8. Their mother died giving birth to Julie. But with that being said, they were still well-behaved kids. I arrived on time. Mr. Frederick was putting his luggage in his trunk when I pulled up. He greeted me with a smile, gave me a list of numbers I might need, told me that he thought Julie was coming down with a cold, not to let her outside for a few days just to be safe. He went inside to kiss the kids and he was on his way. The first night the kids went to bed after playing a few board games with me and watching a movie. Julie seemed better until she woke up at about midnight violently throwing up. I rubbed her back and put a cold washcloth on her neck. I was about to call her dad, afraid she might have something more than a cold, something like the flu. But she said she felt much better and just wanted to go to bed. I was sleeping in their guest bedroom when I was awoken by laughter. I opened my eyes and found Julie sitting on the edge of my bed, cross-legged, her back facing me. She was still laughing when I sat up. I kind of laughed along with her, then asked, "What are you laughing at, sweetie?" Almost immediately after I asked her, she stopped laughing. And almost sounded like she was growling. That I found very, very creepy. Anyway, I said her name softly, kind of just confused what she was doing. She started screaming, "Stop laughing at me," over and over. She started screaming. I get out of my bed immediately, grab onto her shoulders and start yelling, "Julie, Julie," over and over. She then stares at me, grinding her teeth, and says through her teeth, "I slit Matthew's throat." And then she started laughing again. So keep in mind, Matthew is the 13-year-old brother. I ran into Matthew's room, burst open the door, and found him to be sound asleep. I was afraid to go back downstairs, but then I told myself, don't be scared of a little girl. I make my way down the steps and Julie is at the bottom of the stairs. "I'm tired. Can I go to bed now?" Julie says, rubbing her eyes. I just looked down at her and simply said, "Yeah." Maybe she was just dreaming because of the Tylenol I gave her. Maybe it made her sleepwalk. I just brushed it off. The next morning, the kids were sleepy. We ate breakfast. I took them to the park. We had a fun, busy day. Bedtime, I couldn't help but fear, though. That shit she said to me through her teeth about her brother just wasn't right. I sent them to bed. I noticed when Julie was running up the stairs, she smiled at me. I smiled back. Then she turned around for a second time and smiled at me again. It freaked me out. It wasn't her smile, her cheerful little girl sweet smile. It was like she changed within seconds. I know it was just a smile, but it made my heart drop. 1 a.m., I'm texting my friend Liz, just talking about the day and bullshitting, when I hear what almost sounds like chanting. I put my phone down, make my way towards the sound. At the top of the flight of stairs, Julie is standing there, feet basically off the first step. I kind of yelled at her, "Julie, get off the step, you're going to fall." She kept saying something. It sounded like nonsense. Then she started saying it slower while looking at me. I'm not the most religious person, but I do know the Lord's Prayer. And she was saying this backwards. That's so freaky. It freaked me out. Same. I just stood there, mouth open, eyes not blinking, throat dry, listening to this 8-year-old saying this prayer backwards. "Julie!" I yelled. She stopped, looked at me, smiles, and says, "Good night." I heard her door close, and I locked my door and passed out. The next day, Matthew gets up early, looking awful. "Are you getting sick?" I asked, putting my hand on his forehead. He grabbed my hand and looked at me in the eyes and said, "Julie scares me." It sent chills through my body. I asked why. He immediately answered, "She watches me sleep, but I'm not sleeping. She laughs and says things that I don't understand." I asked him what kind of things, and he said he couldn't understand her. It sounded like she was just, and then he did this thing with his tongue. To me, it sounded like he was trying to say she was speaking in tongues. Julie walked into the kitchen. Our conversation was ended, and Matthew got up from the table with his bowl of cereal. She grabbed his arm, and while looking at me, said, "Don't trust the whore." I screamed at her, "Hey, don't you talk like that ever again." She smiled at me and in her cheerful little voice asked, "Can I have a bowl of Lucky Charms?" I called my mom, who said she was simply acting out because her dad wasn't around and she just wanted some attention. I told her I was getting freaked out, and then she gave me this lecture about how Mr. Frederick was counting on me. The last night I was there, same routine, movies and bedtime. I got a hug from Matthew and Julie followed it. I felt bad not wanting to hug her. She squeezed me hard and kissed my cheek. Then she whispered really slowly, "I wouldn't sleep tonight." This was much deeper and more manly than a little girl voice. It completely terrified me. I'm worried this demon child is going to kill me in my sleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I stared blankly at the TV. That's when I heard screaming. Horrible, make your heart drop screaming. I checked on Matthew first because he was closest. He was just staring at me when I opened the door. He then ran with me to Julie's room. She was right there in front of me. But her head was bent so far back that it was touching her back. You could hear clicking from her bones. I feel bad now for doing this, but I slammed the door, called 911, followed by calling her dad, hysterically telling him about everything that happened. Julie was then taken to a mental hospital, evaluated, and let go. They said she suffered a slight brain aneurysm and a seizure. I never babysat for the Fredericks after that, but I did get a letter in the mail from all 3 of them. Mr. Frederick's kind words, basically just saying thank you for watching the children. Matthew basically saying the same. And Julie's, it said exactly this: "You can sleep again." And she drew black clouds and a black cross. Well, you guys, that is it for this story. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it freaked you out a little bit like it did me. I used to babysit children. I never nannied. I stayed late at the houses that I babysat, but I never stayed the night. I cannot imagine. Some kids have said some pretty freaky things to me personally, so I cannot imagine this ever happening. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video.